I'm Frederick, 34 years old, and I dedicated 15 years of my life to our family construction business, expecting to lead it someday. Then my parents unexpectedly handed control to my younger sister Jessica, who barely knew which end of a hammer to hold. After years of sacrifice, I made a decision. Step back and let nature take its course. Family loyalty matters, but everyone has their breaking point. If you've ever had family take you for granted, hit like and subscribe now, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My story might just help you avoid my mistakes. Growing up as the son of Robert Miller, founder of Miller Construction, meant the business was never just a company to me, it was our legacy. From the time I was old enough to understand what my dad did for a living, I was fascinated by the buildings he created. Our dinner conversations revolved around project deadlines, client meetings, and industry challenges. While other kids had posters of rock stars on their walls, I had blueprints and sketches of houses my dad had built. Miller Construction started in our garage when I was just 5 years old. My father, with nothing but his toolbox and determination, built it from scratch into one of the most respected construction companies in our region. Every weekend, I'd beg to visit job sites, wearing a too large hard hat that constantly slipped over my eyes. Those early memories shaped my entire future. By the time I reached high school, there was never any question about my career path. I selected classes that would prepare me for running a construction business: advanced math, business principles, technical drawing, and computer design. My guidance counselor tried to convince me to keep my options open, pointing out my aptitude for science might make me an excellent engineer or doctor, but my mind was set. The family business was my destiny. Summer after sophomore year, at 16, I started officially working for Miller Construction. Dad insisted I learn from the ground up. My first summer was spent as a laborer, hauling materials, cleaning sites, and running endless errands. My hands blistered, my muscles ached, but I never complained. The following summer, I assisted the carpenters, then the electricians, then the plumbers. By graduation, I knew the practical aspects of construction better than most of our employees. The sacrifices started early. I turned down a full academic scholarship to Northwestern University to attend our local state college, allowing me to continue working at Miller Construction while earning my business degree. My friends left for exciting opportunities across the country while I stayed behind. When McKinsey recruiters came to campus and offered me a position after seeing my business analysis projects, I declined without hesitation. The family business was waiting. My sister Jessica was different. 7 years younger than me, she showed absolutely no interest in construction or the family business. While I spent weekends at job sites, Jessica was at dance recitals, art classes, and later, social events with friends. Our parents never pushed her toward the business the way they did with me, and that seemed natural. I was the son who would take over. Jessica would pursue her own path. Our family dynamics reflected this understanding. Dad was a traditional man who believed in clear roles. Mom, Diane, supported his vision while managing the household and occasionally helping with the company bookkeeping in the early days. Family dinners often felt like business meetings, where Dad would quiz me on construction principles while Jessica rolled her eyes or texted under the table. Despite the pressure, my early years working full-time at Miller Construction were genuinely fulfilling. I loved solving problems, working with clients to bring their visions to life, and seeing tangible results of our labor. After completing my business degree, I joined full-time as a project manager, determined to prove my worth beyond being the owner's son. The company grew steadily under my contributions. When I started, we had 12 employees and handled mostly residential renovations. Within 5 years, we expanded to 30 employees and took on commercial projects. I implemented digital project management systems when most local competitors were still using paper files and spreadsheets. Our efficiency increased, errors decreased, and profits grew. Key employees became like extended family. Brian Thompson, our foreman, had been with the company since before I was born. His practical knowledge complemented my theoretical education perfectly. Linda Carson, our office manager, knew every client by name, and remembered details about their families that helped us maintain strong relationships. Marcus Washington, the brilliant architect we brought on when we expanded into design-build projects, turned our technical capabilities into artistic achievements. These core team members respected my position and gradually came to see me as a leader rather than just the boss's kid. By my late 20s, Miller Construction had become as much my creation as my father's. While he had built the foundation, I was building the future, or so I thought. As I entered my late 20s, Dad gradually handed me more control over daily operations. What began as managing single projects expanded to overseeing entire divisions. By 28, I was effectively running everything except for final financial decisions and major strategic directions, which Dad still insisted on controlling. The construction industry was changing rapidly, and I positioned us to evolve with it. I convinced Dad to invest in building information modeling software when competitors were still working with basic CAD programs. The $50,000 expenditure nearly caused him a second heart attack, but within 6 months, it had paid for itself by preventing costly errors and impressing upscale clients with our sophisticated presentations. We expanded our service area from a 30-mile radius to covering 3 counties. This meant more driving time, but also access to more affluent markets and larger projects. I personally handled client relationships in these new territories, often driving 2 hours each way for a single meeting to ensure we maintained the personal touch that had built our reputation. My biggest achievement came when I landed the Westridge commercial development contract, a $12 million project that would involve constructing an entire shopping center. Previously, we had never handled anything over $3 million. The developers had initially approached larger firms, but I spent weeks preparing a proposal that highlighted our personal attention, local connections, and commitment to quality that the bigger companies couldn't match. During this period of expansion, my work weeks regularly stretched to 70 or 80 hours. I arrived before sunrise to prepare for the day and often left well after dark, reviewing contracts and planning for upcoming projects. Weekends weren't for relaxation. They were for site visits that couldn't happen during regular working hours or for catching up on paperwork. While I poured everything into the family business, Jessica was enjoying her college experience at Brentwood University, a private school costing nearly $50,000 per year. Our parents never questioned the expense, even though it strained company finances during leaner construction seasons. Jessica majored in marketing, spent a semester abroad in Paris, and joined a sorority that seemed to have more parties than philanthropic events, based on her social media posts. The contrast between our lives couldn't have been more stark. When Jessica posted photos from spring break in Cancun, I was handling the aftermath of a subcontractor bankruptcy that threatened to derail our largest project. When she stressed about final exams, I was dealing with actual financial stress that affected dozens of employees' livelihoods. Dad's health issues began during this period. A minor heart attack at 62 scared all of us and resulted in doctor-ordered reduction of his workload. His partial step back accelerated my takeover of daily operations. Though he never officially named me as his successor, the implication was clear to everyone. Dad would come into the office for a few hours each morning, review what I was doing, offer some advice or criticism, and then leave me to handle everything else. Mom became increasingly vocal about her pride in my leadership. "Frederick is just like you were at his age, Robert," she would say during family dinners. "The company will be in good hands when you retire." These comments, coupled with Dad asking for my input on long-term decisions, reinforced my understanding that Miller Construction would eventually be mine to lead. The personal sacrifices mounted during these years. My relationship with Amanda, whom I had been dating since college, entered a holding pattern. We wanted to get married, buy a house, start a family, but I kept delaying. Just until we finish the Westridge project, I'd say. Just until Dad fully recovers. Just until the company is more stable. Amanda showed remarkable patience, understanding that my dedication to the family business was part of who I was. When Jessica graduated with her marketing degree, Dad suggested bringing her into the company for a summer internship in our almost non-existent marketing department. "It would be good experience for her," he said, and maybe she could help modernize our approach. I agreed, expecting her internship to last a few months before she moved on to a marketing position with a more glamorous company. Jessica's initial weeks at Miller Construction confirmed my expectations. She arrived late, took long lunches, and spent more time texting than working. Her first assignment was to update our company brochure, which she delegated almost entirely to a college friend who was a graphic design major. When the friend delivered a sleek, modern design that looked nothing like our brand identity, Jessica presented it as her own work. Despite this rocky start, something unexpected happened midway through summer. Jessica began showing genuine interest in certain aspects of the business. She accompanied me to a client meeting and afterward offered surprisingly insightful observations about their unstated concerns. She started asking questions about our bidding process and project management approach. I found myself actually enjoying having her around and began to envision a future where she might handle the marketing and client relations side while I managed operations and construction. By summer's end, I felt more secure than ever in my position as the future leader of Miller Construction. The company was thriving under my guidance. Dad was gradually stepping back, and even Jessica seemed to be finding a place within the business that complemented rather than threatened my role. I had no idea that the ground beneath my feet was already shifting. The first subtle shift in dynamics came when Jessica announced she wanted to join Miller Construction full-time after her internship. Our parents were ecstatic, both Miller children working in the family business. Mom gushed at Sunday dinner. "Your grandfather would have been so proud." Dad nodded in agreement, his eyes misty with emotion I rarely saw from him. Initially, Jessica's permanent role seemed beneficial. She formalized our marketing department, creating social media accounts, refreshing our website, and producing professional materials that definitely improved our image. We collaborated on a few projects where her presentation skills complemented my technical knowledge. At a Builders Association dinner, her charming interaction with potential clients helped us secure 2 new contracts. The first red flag appeared about 3 months after Jessica came aboard full-time. During a meeting with the Hartman Group, a commercial developer we'd worked with for years, Jessica interrupted my explanation of construction timelines to suggest an accelerated schedule I knew was impossible. Rather than deferring to my expertise, she pushed her point, making promises we couldn't keep. After the meeting, when I explained the problems with her approach, she waved off my concerns. "Clients want to hear optimistic timelines. We can always explain delays later if necessary." More concerning was her habit of going directly to Dad with ideas, bypassing our normal project management channels. I would discover changes to plans or budgets that had already received Dad's approval without my input. When confronted, Jessica would innocently claim she thought Dad had already discussed it with me, or that she was just trying to save everyone time. Family dinners became stages for subtle credit stealing. "The Sullivan project is going so well since we implemented my new client communication system," Jessica would say, conveniently omitting that the system was my idea that she had merely helped execute. Dad would beam with pride at her initiative, while I sat silently fuming. 6 months into Jessica's full-time employment, Dad began regularly consulting her on business decisions that had previously been exclusively between him and me. "Jessica thinks we should pursue more commercial work and fewer residential projects," he'd announce, presenting her opinion as if it carried equal weight to mine, despite my decade more experience. Mom's comments shifted too. What started as praise for both her children working together evolved into specific appreciation for Jessica's fresh perspective and modern thinking. The implication that my approach was somehow outdated stung, especially given our company's growth under my leadership. The most alarming development was a pattern of closed-door meetings between Jessica and our parents. I'd arrive at the office to find them huddled in Dad's office, conversation stopping abruptly when I entered. "Just catching up," Mom would say with an unconvincing smile. "Nothing important," Dad would add, shuffling papers on his desk. Amanda noticed the shifting dynamics before I fully admitted them to myself. "They're treating Jessica differently," she observed after a particularly tense family dinner, where my parents had lavished praise on Jessica's minor marketing achievement, while barely acknowledging my successful completion of a multi-million-dollar project. "She's still new," I reasoned, They're just encouraging her." Amanda gave me a look of concerned disbelief. "Frederick, I think you need to consider the possibility that they're grooming Jessica for more than just marketing." I dismissed her concerns. After all, I had devoted my entire life to Miller Construction. I had learned every aspect of the business, built relationships with clients and suppliers, and literally bled for the company on more than one job site. The idea that my parents would hand leadership to Jessica after her minimal contribution seemed absurd. Family gatherings grew increasingly uncomfortable. Thanksgiving dinner erupted into a heated argument when Dad praised Jessica's suggestion to target luxury home renovations, an idea I had proposed 2 years earlier, and he had rejected. Christmas gift exchanges felt transactional rather than warm, with Mom giving Jessica a leather portfolio embossed with future CEO as a joke that no one laughed at. Despite these tensions, my professional accomplishments continued. I secured the Monroe County government contract, a massive opportunity that would double our company's size and necessitate hiring 20 new employees. The project would span 3 years and generate steady, reliable income that could fund expansion into new markets. It was the kind of legacy-defining achievement that should have cemented my position as the obvious heir to the company. The situation finally boiled over during a strategy meeting, where Jessica presented a complete company rebranding proposal. New logo, new colors, new mission statement, without consulting me at all. The proposed changes discarded 30 years of brand recognition and the reputation we'd built. Worse, the accompanying business plan suggested moving away from the custom home construction that had been our bread and butter for decades. "This is ridiculous," I finally snapped after she finished her presentation. "You can't just walk in after less than a year and suggest completely dismantling everything we've built." Jessica looked hurt. "I'm not dismantling anything. I'm trying to help us evolve. By throwing away 30 years of reputation? By abandoning clients who have been with us since before you were born?" Dad cleared his throat. "Frederick, that's enough. Jessica put a lot of work into this proposal. The least you could do is consider it with an open mind." I looked at him in disbelief. "Are you serious? This would completely change the direction of the company, and she didn't even discuss it with me first." "Maybe because she knew you'd react exactly like this," Mom interjected. The meeting ended with tension thick enough to cut with a saw. As everyone filed out, Dad asked Jessica to stay behind. Through the glass wall of the conference room, I could see them continuing to discuss her proposal, their heads bent together over her presentation materials, both smiling. I drove home that evening with a knot in my stomach, Amanda's warnings echoing in my mind. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that my position might not be as secure as I had always believed. December arrived, bringing with it the annual Miller Construction Christmas party, a tradition that had grown from pizza in the office to a full catered event at the Grand Hotel Ballroom as our company prospered. This year's party held special significance. Dad had hinted for months that he would be making a major announcement about the company's future direction. Despite the tensions of recent months, I felt confident the announcement would formalize my position as the company's next CEO. Dad had been gradually reducing his hours, and my successful management of the Monroe County project had demonstrated my capability to lead the company into its next chapter. The timing made sense. Dad would be 63 in January, and he had always talked about stepping back at 65. I prepared meticulously for what I assumed would be my moment of recognition. I bought a new charcoal gray suit, had my speech professionally printed on heavy cardstock, and even practiced my remarks in front of Amanda, who offered supportive critiques on my delivery. I planned to acknowledge Dad's legacy while outlining my vision for the company's future, respecting our traditions while embracing strategic innovation. The evening of the party arrived, and everything looked perfect. The ballroom was decorated with twinkling lights and subtle construction-themed centerpieces that Linda had designed. Employees mingled with clients and suppliers, everyone in good spirits from the open bar and the year's strong performance. Jessica arrived fashionably late in a designer dress that cost more than most of our employees made in a week, immediately drawing attention as she worked the room with practiced charm. After dinner, Dad stood and tapped his glass for attention. The room fell silent as he began his speech, praising the company's growth and thanking key employees for their contributions. My heart raced as he transitioned to talking about the future. As many of you know, I've been considering stepping back from day-to-day operations, he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. Miller Construction needs leadership that will carry it forward for the next 30 years. I straightened in my seat, preparing to stand when he called my name, which is why I'm pleased to announce that starting January 1st, Jessica Miller will be taking over as Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder of Miller Construction. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. Scattered applause broke out, then grew as people processed the announcement. Jessica rose, feigning surprise that didn't reach her eyes, and joined Dad at the podium. They embraced as cameras flashed, capturing the moment for the company newsletter. Jessica brings fresh energy and modern vision that will take Miller Construction to new heights, Dad continued. Her marketing background and innovative ideas are exactly what we need in today's competitive environment. I sat frozen, Amanda's hand gripping mine under the table so tightly it hurt. Mom beamed from her seat, dabbing at tears of joy. Not once did Dad mention my 15 years of service or the role I had played in building the company to its current success. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I shook hands robotically, accepting congratulations for your family's success from clients who seemed uncertain how to address me now. Several longtime employees gave me concerned looks or squeezed my shoulder in silent support, but most were busy currying favor with Jessica, the newly anointed leader. Brian, our foreman who had watched me grow up on construction sites, pulled me aside near the bar. "This isn't right, Frederick. Everyone knows you built this company as much as your father did." I forced a smile. "It's a family business. What matters is that it stays successful." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. After most guests had departed, I found my parents and Jessica in a small group with our accountant and lawyer, champagne glasses in hand. When they noticed me approaching, their laughter died away. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice tight with control. Privately, we moved to an empty conference room adjacent to the ballroom. As soon as the door closed, I turned to my father. 15 years. I gave this company 15 years of my life. Dad straightened defensively. "And you'll continue to have a place with us. Nothing changes for you day to day." "Nothing changes? You just gave away my future without even discussing it with me." "It wasn't your future to claim," he replied sharply. "The business belongs to your mother and me. We make the decisions about succession." "We felt this was best for the company," Mom added, her tone conciliatory. Jessica's fresh approach. "Stop saying that," I interrupted. "There's nothing fresh about inexperience. She knows nothing about construction, nothing about managing projects or dealing with subcontractors or handling building inspectors." Jessica stepped forward. "That's not fair, Frederick. I've learned a lot in the past year." "A year versus my lifetime? Are you serious right now?" Dad put his hand on Jessica's shoulder. "Your sister has qualities you lack, Frederick. She knows how to talk to people, how to inspire them. Construction knowledge can be learned. Leadership is innate." The implication that I lacked leadership qualities after successfully managing dozens of employees for years was the final insult. "You'll still have a job," Dad continued. "What are you complaining about? Vice President of Operations is nothing to sneeze at." I stared at him, finally seeing clearly. This was never about what was best for the company. This was about what you wanted. You never saw me as a leader because you never looked. The drive home was conducted in stunned silence. Amanda waited until we were inside our apartment before exploding. "How dare they? After everything you've done, your father is making the biggest mistake of his life." I sank onto the couch, tie loosened, the weight of 15 wasted years crushing my chest. "He doesn't see it that way." "Then he's a fool," Amanda declared fiercely. "And Jessica? Pretending to be surprised when she's obviously been planning this with them for months? Disgusting." Sleep eluded me that night. I stared at the ceiling, replaying years of memories, learning to read blueprints on Dad's knee, carrying lumber across job sites as a teenager, landing my first major client, solving seemingly impossible construction problems that had stumped even the veterans. Had none of it mattered? Had I been deluding myself all along about my place in the family and the business? By dawn, something had hardened inside me. If my family couldn't see my value, perhaps it was time they learned exactly what that value was worth. The weekend after the Christmas party, I barely left our apartment. Amanda brought me coffee and meals, worried as I alternated between rage and despair. By Sunday evening, I had cycled through all 5 stages of grief and reached a state of cold clarity. I could quit, I told Amanda as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset. Walk away completely. There are firms that would hire me tomorrow. She considered this, sipping her tea. What would that accomplish, besides giving them an excuse to say you abandoned the family when things got tough? Her insight cut through my emotional fog. You're right. Quitting outright plays into their narrative. So what are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking I need to talk to someone who understands both business and family dynamics. The next morning, I called Professor Martin, my former business ethics teacher who had become a mentor. We met for coffee near campus, and I laid out the entire situation. Sounds like you have 2 separate problems, he said after listening carefully. The professional betrayal and the personal one. They require different strategies. I'm all ears. Professionally, you need to protect yourself while determining your next steps. Document your contributions, secure your client relationships, perhaps quietly explore other opportunities. Personally, he paused, choosing his words carefully. You need to decide what kind of relationship you want with your family long-term, regardless of the business situation. His advice crystallized my approach. I would continue working at Miller Construction, but on my terms. No more 70-hour weeks, no more emergency calls on weekends, no more sacrificing my personal life for a company that didn't value my contributions. I spent that evening drafting a detailed plan with Amanda's input. First, I would document all my specialized knowledge contact information for key clients and suppliers, details on ongoing projects, solutions to recurring problems that only I knew how to handle. This information would be organized and stored securely, not for leverage but for my own protection. Second, I would set clear boundaries around my time and effort. 40 hours per week, not a minute more. No responding to emails after hours. No working weekends unless contractually required and compensated appropriately. Third, I would begin discreetly networking and interviewing with competitors to understand my market value and options. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I would watch carefully and document the inevitable problems that would arise under Jessica's leadership, not out of spite, but to protect myself from being blamed for failures I didn't create. Monday morning, I arrived at the office precisely at 8 o'clock rather than my usual 6:30. Jessica was already there, sitting in Dad's old office, looking uncomfortable behind the massive desk. She smiled tentatively when she saw me. Good morning, Frederick. I was hoping we could talk about the transition. Of course, I replied with professional courtesy that revealed nothing of my inner thoughts. What would you like to discuss? I'm thinking we should have daily briefings, at least for the first few months. There's so much I need to learn about the operational side. I'm available during business hours, I said. My calendar is updated with my availability. If she noticed the emphasis on business hours, she didn't show it. We spent an hour reviewing ongoing projects, during which I provided accurate but minimal information. When she asked questions, I answered directly without volunteering additional insights or context. The changes in my approach were subtle at first, noticeable only to those who knew me well. When a client called at 7 in the evening with a non-emergency question, I let it go to voicemail and responded the next morning. When a supplier delivery was delayed, I documented the issue and its impact rather than personally driving to the warehouse to expedite it as I would have before. Brian, our foreman, was the first to notice. You okay, Frederick? You seem different lately. I'm fine, I assured him, just establishing better work-life balance. His knowing look told me he understood the real situation. About time. Been telling you that for years. Jessica's struggles became apparent within weeks. The first major crisis occurred when a custom home client requested substantial changes mid-project. Previously, I would have managed the client's expectations, adjusted the schedule and budget, and smoothed any ruffled feathers among the subcontractors. Jessica approved the changes without understanding the cascading impacts, then became flustered when costs escalated and deadlines slipped. She burst into my office late one afternoon, clutching a budget variance report. "Why is the Henderson project 30% over budget? What's happening?" I looked up calmly from my computer. "The change orders you approved required extensive rework of completed elements. That costs money. Why didn't someone tell me?" According to the meeting notes, Brian explained the implications when you discussed the changes. "There's a documented warning about budget impact." I pulled up the notes on my screen and turned it toward her. Her face flushed. "Well, we need to fix this. Can you talk to the subcontractors about reducing their charges? That would be inappropriate. They've already performed the work based on approved change orders. We need to explain the situation to the client and invoice accordingly." Jessica left my office frustrated, and I returned to my work, logging off precisely at 5 o'clock despite knowing she was meeting with the client later that evening. The next day, I learned she had promised the client to absorb the extra costs as a courtesy, a decision that cost the company nearly $30,000. Similar scenarios played out across multiple projects. Jessica struggled with the technical aspects of construction scheduling, underestimated completion times, and failed to anticipate common problems that experienced managers would have prevented. When difficulties arose, she often made expensive concessions rather than having difficult conversations with clients or contractors. Meanwhile, I continued my quiet job search. A lunch meeting with the owner of Westbrook Construction, our biggest competitor, revealed that my reputation in the industry was stronger than I'd realized. "We'd create a position for you tomorrow," Tom Westbrook told me bluntly. "Name your salary. Your client relationships alone would be worth the investment." I thanked him, but maintained I was just networking, not actively looking to leave yet. Similar conversations with 3 other firms confirmed my market value and provided a safety net for when the time came to make my move. At home, Amanda and I began planning our future outside of Miller Construction. We looked at houses, discussing locations that would work regardless of where I ultimately landed professionally. We set a wedding date, no longer willing to delay our personal lives for the family business. The fog of betrayal gradually lifted as I focused on building something new rather than mourning what I'd lost. 3 months into Jessica's leadership, the consequences of inexperience became impossible to ignore. Brian resigned after a particularly heated disagreement about safety protocols that Jessica had deemed too costly and time-consuming. Linda followed 2 weeks later, citing changes in company culture in her resignation letter. Both had been with Miller Construction for over 20 years. Jessica replaced them with friends from her university days, a former sorority sister as office manager, and her ex-boyfriend's brother as site supervisor, neither with relevant experience. Quality issues multiplied, and client complaints increased exponentially. Dad began showing up at the office more frequently, his expression growing increasingly concerned as he observed the chaos. During one project review meeting, I noticed him wincing as Jessica struggled to explain why the Monroe County project had fallen 3 weeks behind schedule in just 2 months. "Perhaps Frederick could help get things back on track," he suggested tentatively. "I'm handling it," Jessica responded sharply. "We just need to adjust some workflows." I remained silent, taking notes, and responding only when directly addressed. Later that day, Dad stopped by my office, closing the door behind him. "Things seem to be a bit rocky," he said, an understatement of monumental proportions. "Transitions can be challenging," I replied neutrally. He fidgeted with his watch. "Jessica mentioned you haven't been as available as you used to be." "I'm fulfilling all my contractual obligations," I said. 40 hours a week, full attention to my assigned responsibilities. "But before, you always went above and beyond." I met his gaze directly. That was when I believed my contributions were valued and would be rewarded accordingly. He had no response to that, and after an uncomfortable silence, he left. That evening, Amanda and I received an offer on a house we loved, 20 minutes outside the city in a neighborhood we'd been eyeing for years. As we celebrated with champagne, I felt another piece of my old life falling away, replaced by something chosen rather than inherited. By the 6-month mark, Jessica's leadership had created a company I barely recognized. Half the experienced staff had left, projects routinely ran over budget and behind schedule, and our once sterling reputation was tarnished by poor quality and broken promises. Through it all, I maintained my professional demeanor, doing exactly what my job required, no more, no less. Then came the call that would ultimately force my hand. James Peterson, the county commissioner overseeing our government contract, contacted me directly rather than going through Jessica. "Frederick, we've got problems," he said without preamble. "Your team missed 3 critical deadlines, the materials don't match specifications, and your new site supervisor doesn't return my calls. What's happening over there?" I took detailed notes and promised to investigate, knowing exactly what had happened but needing official documentation. The next morning, I compiled a comprehensive report detailing the issues, their causes, and the potential financial penalties, which could exceed 6 figures. I presented it to Jessica in a formal meeting, with our project manager present as a witness. Her reaction was predictable. "This is ridiculous. Why didn't you prevent these problems?" "These areas aren't under my purview anymore," I replied calmly. "You reassigned the Monroe project to Gary last month, stating you wanted him to take more ownership of our major contracts. Well, you need to fix it," she demanded. "You have the relationship with Peterson. I can provide information and context, but as Vice President of Operations, I don't have authority to make the necessary changes without your approval." The meeting ended with Jessica nearly in tears from frustration. That evening, I received a call from a headhunter representing CRG International, a construction firm expanding into our region. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. 2 days later, the Monroe County situation deteriorated further when an inspection revealed substandard electrical work that violated building codes. The project was temporarily shut down, triggering penalty clauses in our contract. As Jessica frantically tried to manage the crisis, I calmly prepared my resignation letter. The Monroe County project shutdown made local news, something unprecedented in Miller Construction's 30-year history. Local builder fails safety inspection on government project ran across the bottom of the evening news, while Jessica attempted damage control in an awkward interview where she clearly didn't understand the technical issues involved. The fallout was immediate. 2 other major clients called to express concerns about their projects. Suppliers who hadn't been paid on time due to Jessica's chaotic financial management began demanding payment before delivery, creating material shortages across multiple job sites. The bank called about concerning trends in our accounts, particularly the rapidly shrinking cash reserves. Brian, our former foreman, who had taken a position with a residential builder, called me privately. "Word's getting around, Frederick. Subcontractors are adding premium to their bids for Miller construction jobs because they don't trust they'll get paid on time." I thanked him for the information and added it to my growing documentation. It wasn't schadenfreude driving me. It was self-preservation and a desire for truth to be recognized. 3 months and 2 weeks into Jessica's leadership, the first major project collapsed entirely. The Riverside commercial development, a strip mall that had been 90% complete when Jessica took over, fell 6 weeks behind schedule after she repeatedly changed finishes and layouts to improve aesthetics without consulting the tenants who had already signed leases based on the original designs. The anchor tenant pulled out, citing breach of contract, which triggered an exodus of other committed businesses. The property owner threatened litigation, and suddenly Miller Construction was facing not only lost revenue but potential legal expenses and damages. That weekend, my parents called a family dinner, the first in months, as tensions had made our usual Sunday gatherings too uncomfortable to continue. Amanda and I arrived to find my parents looking tired and stressed. Jessica arrived late, eyes red from crying. Dinner was a silent, awkward affair until Dad finally cleared his throat. "We need to discuss the business." "What about it?" I asked, taking a sip of water. "Things aren't going as smoothly as expected," he admitted, the understatement of the year. Mom jumped in, still defensive. "Any new leadership has adjustment periods. Jessica just needs more time." "Time won't fix fundamental problems," I replied calmly. "Construction requires technical knowledge and industry relationships that take years to develop." "Are you saying I'm incapable of learning?" Jessica snapped, her composure cracking. "I'm saying the company can't afford the tuition for your education," I responded. Every mistake costs money and reputation we may never recover. This is ridiculous. Jessica stood up, hands flat on the table. You've been undermining me from day one. You're happy to see me fail. I haven't done anything except exactly what my job description entails, I said evenly. No more unpaid overtime, no more solving problems outside my department, no more covering for management mistakes. You're sabotaging me, she accused. Jessica, Dad interrupted sharply. That's enough. Frederick hasn't done anything wrong professionally. It was the first time he'd defended me since the succession announcement, but it came far too late. The situation at Monroe County is dire, Dad continued, turning to me. We need your help, Frederick. You have the relationships and knowledge to get things back on track. I'm sorry, but I can't take that on, I replied. I'm already at capacity with my assigned projects, and I have personal commitments that prevent me from working additional hours. What personal commitments could possibly be more important than saving the family business? Mom demanded. Amanda spoke for the first time that evening. We're buying a house and planning our wedding. Things we've delayed for years while Frederick poured everything into Miller Construction. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Finally, Dad spoke again. We could offer additional compensation for taking on the Monroe project, a bonus structure tied to getting it back on schedule. It was exactly the kind of recognition and reward that should have come years ago. Now, it was too little, too late. I'm afraid that won't be possible, I said. I've accepted a position with CRG International as their regional operations director. I start in 3 weeks. The shock around the table was palpable. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad's face drained of color. Jessica looked simultaneously vindicated and terrified. You're leaving? Dad asked hoarsely. After all these years? Yes. My resignation letter will be on your desk Monday morning. The drive home was significantly lighter than the drive there had been. Amanda reached over and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. They needed to hear the truth. I know, I said. I just wish it hadn't come to this. The next 3 weeks were a strange limbo. I worked diligently to document all my processes, create transition materials, and ensure my departure wouldn't damage the company beyond what its leadership had already done. Jessica avoided me entirely, working from home most days. Dad made several awkward attempts at reconciliation, offering increased salary and even an equity stake too late to change my decision. My final client meeting was with James Peterson from Monroe County. I introduced him to my replacement, explained the situation professionally, and assured him I had documented everything needed to get the project back on track. After my replacement left, Peterson shook his head. Their loss is going to be catastrophic, Frederick. You were the heart of that company. Maybe, I acknowledged, but it's time for me to build something new. My last day at Miller Construction was surreal. Many employees gathered for a hastily organized goodbye lunch. Linda, who had already left, came back specifically to wish me well. Jessica didn't attend. Dad made a brief appearance, looking uncomfortable and leaving early. Mom didn't come at all. As I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, surprisingly few after 15 years, Brian appeared in my doorway. Never thought I'd see this day, he said, leaning against the frame. Neither did I admitted. For what it's worth, most of us know exactly what happened here. He gestured around at the office beyond. Won't be long before there's nothing left to save. I nodded, not taking satisfaction in the prediction but recognizing its likely accuracy. Take care of yourself, Brian. Let me know if you ever want a change of scenery. CRG is hiring experienced foremen. My departure was quiet, without fanfare. I turned in my keys and company phone, signed the final paperwork, and walked out the door of the building I had helped design 8 years earlier. It felt like leaving a part of myself behind, but also like shedding a weight I'd carried for too long. That evening, Amanda and I signed the papers for our new house, a beautiful colonial with a large yard perfect for the children we hoped to have. As we toasted our future, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Jessica just fired Marcus for insubordination after he questioned a design change. The architect who replaced him has never done commercial work. I put my phone away without responding. Miller Construction's fate was no longer my concern. 6 months into my new position at CRG International, life had transformed completely. My role came with appropriate compensation, recognition of my expertise, and most importantly, reasonable expectations about work-life balance. For the first time in my adult life, I regularly left the office by 5 and enjoyed weekends without work interruptions. Amanda and I settled into our new home, planning our wedding for the following spring. The distance from Miller Construction allowed old wounds to begin healing, though occasional updates from former colleagues kept me informed of the company's continuing decline. Monroe County had ultimately canceled their contract after repeated failures to meet revised deadlines, resulting in a financial penalty that reportedly strained the company's resources to breaking point. 3 more experienced project managers had resigned, followed by their teams. Jessica had attempted to pivot to smaller residential projects, but the company's damaged reputation made winning new clients difficult. I took no pleasure in these reports. Despite everything, Miller Construction represented my family's legacy and decades of hard work by many dedicated people. Watching its decline was like watching a childhood home slowly crumble, painful even when you've moved on. The most unexpected development came nearly a year after my departure. On a Sunday afternoon, as Amanda and I worked in our garden, my father's truck pulled into our driveway. He sat there for several minutes before finally emerging, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said as I met him halfway up the walkway. "Would you like to come in?" I offered, surprising myself with the invitation. He nodded, following me inside. Amanda graciously offered him coffee and then made herself scarce, giving us privacy to talk. We sat in awkward silence until Dad finally spoke. "Miller Construction is being sold. The papers will be signed next week." Though I'd suspected this outcome, hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the stomach. "I'm sorry to hear that. 20 cents on the dollar of what it was worth 2 years ago," he continued, staring into his coffee. "Barely enough to cover our debts and provide a small retirement fund for your mother and me." I remained silent, waiting. "Jessica stepped down 3 months ago. She's in therapy now, dealing with anxiety and depression. Says the pressure was too much." He looked up at me. "She never wanted it, you know." "Not really. She wanted my approval, and I used that against her. Against both of you." The admission stunned me. "What do you mean?" "I convinced myself Jessica needed the business more than you did, that you would be successful anywhere, while she needed the structure and legacy." He shook his head slowly. "I was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I owe you an apology, and much more that I can never repay." His voice cracked. "I took your dedication for granted. Worse, I punished you for it. The more you gave, the more I expected, until I couldn't even see what you were contributing." The apology I had once desperately wanted now felt hollow against the magnitude of what had been lost. Not just the business, but years of relationship and trust. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued, "but I want you to know I recognize what I did, what we did, and I'm sorry." We talked for another hour, not resolving everything but beginning a process that might eventually lead to healing. As he was leaving, Dad turned back. "You're doing well here? At CRG?" "I am," I confirmed. "Very well. Good." He nodded, seeming genuinely relieved. "That's good." Over the following months, our family cautiously began rebuilding relationships separate from the business that had defined us for so long. Jessica and I met for coffee, an awkward but necessary conversation where she acknowledged her role in what happened, while also sharing how our parents had manipulated her insecurities. Mom remained the most resistant to accountability, but even she eventually admitted things should have been handled differently. My wedding day arrived, a joyful celebration, notably free of business talk. Dad gave a toast that acknowledged my new path without dwelling on the past. "To building new foundations," he said, raising his glass with a look that conveyed deeper meaning between us. 2 years after leaving Miller Construction, I was promoted to National Operations Director at CRG. The position came with equity in the company and a level of respect I had never experienced in the family business. Projects under my direction consistently came in on time and under budget, building my reputation industry-wide. The lessons I learned through this painful experience transformed my approach to both work and family. I established clear boundaries around my time and energy, recognizing that martyrdom serves no one in the long run. I learned to articulate my value, rather than assuming it would be recognized. Most importantly, I discovered that sometimes stepping back is the only way for others to see what you've been contributing all along. Family businesses carry unique challenges, blending personal relationships with professional responsibilities in ways that can become toxic when not carefully managed. Clear agreements, appropriate compensation, and transparent communication are not just business best practices, they're essential for preserving family bonds when money and power enter the equation. The irony wasn't lost on me that my greatest professional success came only after the devastating loss of what I thought was my destiny. The family business I had poured my life into became a stepping stone to something better suited to my talents and values. Sometimes the path you're pushed off turns out not to be the right one after all. Has anyone in your family ever taken you for granted? Have you ever had to step back to show your true value? Leave a comment below and share your experience. Life's most painful moments often contain our most valuable lessons if we're willing to learn from them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Until next time, this is Frederick, reminding you that sometimes letting go is the first step toward building something better.